Organizational history.
Okay.
Because I need some lead tape anyhow.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hi, my name is Regis D'Angelini, and I'm with the Committee on Organizational History. And this is the first of our interviews with longtime members. And I'm here with Tim Wilson today. And also interviewing Tim is going to be Irv Rothenberg, whose voice you will hear shortly. Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Except it's Irwin.
What did I say, Irv? Okay.
I'm destined to be cursed with it, but
Okay.
that's okay.
Okay, Tim, when did you join the National Organization?
I attended the first convention, which was in San Francisco in June of '81.
Okay. And you've been at every convention since, correct?
Yes, through number 18.
Okay, wow. Why did you join NABWMT in the first place?
I had seen an ad for it in about May of 1980 in one of the gay papers in Denver, and was in the process of moving, so I sort of put it on the back burner, and then in October of that year I ran an ad in Denver and helped start the first chapter there for Colorado.
Okay. So what chapter, have you been with the Colorado chapter the whole time you've been with the organization?
No, I've done a lot of traveling,
Okay.
moving around.
What different chapters have you been with?
Denver and Los Angeles and Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco Bay Area.
Considering the amount of time you've been with the organization, I'm sure you've been involved in lots of projects. Can you tell us about some of the different ones you've been in over the years?
I was one of the sort of second generation of co-chairs. When the organization was first started, we just had 4 officer positions, and in 1985, we'd had the House of Delegates and the officers, but a lot of things weren't really happening between conventions. So in 1985, in Los Angeles, we created the first National Board of Directors. So I think that was a significant contribution. Also, that was John Bush's idea, and I helped implement it. The first board meeting was in Milwaukee in October of '85. And I served almost 3 one-year terms, and I spent most of my time doing chapter development work, traveling to different chapters, either solo chapters or for regional conferences, doing chapter development, whatever the chapter needed.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember some of the people who were on that first board with you, some of the names?
Well, the officers at the time were John Bush and myself as co-chairs. Jerry Mallon was secretary, and Wendell Roberson was the secretary. I would be really hard-pressed to name that initial board. I remember Gavin Morrow Hall was on because he's one of the youngest people who ever served as a director. I think he was 22 or 23. Erwin Rothenberg, who else? You could help.
Oh, of course. Ollie Lee Taylor.
Ken Peters.
Tom Doyle.
Bruce
Bob
Pennington.
Doyle, Bruce Pennington.
Yeah, it's a good thing some of the History Project folks are here.
Okay. When you were saying that you traveled to the different chapters doing chapter development, could you tell me a little bit more about what you did exactly when you went to those chapters?
I would try to have sort of an informal time to talk with chapter members in addition to the leaders. I really focus on, I want to meet with leaders, but I want to meet with the other folks in the chapter, because I think one of the challenges has been a few people are connected to the national and the rest of the chapter hardly knows what's going on, and I made a real effort to interact, sometimes very informally, but try to meet as many different members and sort of get their input, give moral support. I mean, we would have structured time too, giving concrete examples. Someone would have a problem with someone who's not too involved anymore gets the mail and we don't get the mail. I mean, just really simple, basic stuff. And and it might be a suggestion as simple as, well, the chapter needs to get a P.O. box in the chapter's name, and you have 2 keys, and you make sure that 2 different people have keys. I mean, just some real simple things sometimes.
Now, did you see a lot of chapters turned around after the chapter development?
I think
I guess what I'm asking is, was you're
you
seeing a
see
lot
results.
of these? Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, were a lot of chapters, I guess, on the brink of dissolving because they just had problems, or was this just to enhance already existing chapters that were fairly strong?
I think some of both. I think a lot of what I dealt with as far as sort of troubleshooting at the chapter level had to do with personalities,
Okay.
personality conflicts, and trying to, not tell the chapter what to do, but get them to talk and to throw out a variety of ideas and let them decide what was most appropriate. I definitely came from a perspective of, I'm not telling people what to do, I'm there to facilitate
Okay.
whatever needed to be done. I've also done some retreats. I remember a retreat in Milwaukee where it was really like a weekend-long retreat, and worked with the chapter several months ahead of time in designing activities and workshops that would really meet the chapter's needs.
Mhm.
But nothing guarantees the chapter is going to be there long term. I mean, many cities have gone through 2 and 3 incarnations of the chapter. So.
In addition to being involved with the first board of directors, what have been some of the other projects you've done over the years?
I think part of my emphasis was on communications, and really made an effort to produce a good newsletter from the co-chairs as a communication vehicle to augment the quarterly newsletter. In other words, this went to delegates and chapters, or board members and chapters, and to really keep those lines of communications open. I don't know that I was particularly involved in projects of the nature that you might be asking about. I did, after I moved to San Francisco, I did get involved with the National Task Force on AIDS Prevention. Initially it was mostly volunteer-driven once they got the CDC funding, but that was mostly because I was living in the Bay Area where the project was based.
Okay. Any other projects that you can think of that you've done over the years?
I have helped a lot with convention planning from 84 on through about 87 particularly. I was very involved with convention planning, and I chaired the program committee for the 1990 convention in San Francisco, which was the 10th anniversary convention. So I've tried to contribute a lot in that arena.
Okay. Since you've been a member, how have you seen the organization change over the years?
The first thing that comes to mind is the tremendous impact of AIDS on this organization, and the unbelievable losses of leaders and the core membership. And I noticed in the program book this convention in Fort Lauderdale that the one of the co-chair letters is saying, we're still here, and in some ways it's pretty amazing that we're still here and still viable as an organization. It's been probably our biggest challenge. Ask the question again, because I...
Oh, my question was how
changes.
have you seen the organization change over the years? Or in your opinion, has it stayed the same?
No. It's been very volatile at times. Maybe it's because I'm not as involved in leadership currently the last several years, but I see that the level of conflict has gone down. And yet I think the whole name change debate that was there at the first convention continues. That's one thing that I would say hasn't, its form or nature may have changed, but the issues are still there. And I see it as there's a second incarnation of a chapter in Denver for the last 11 months, and you know, some of the folks that made that effort have some real strong opinions about the name. So I think that's that's going to be an ongoing challenge for us. I don't think the issue may be with us forever. If nothing else, I think the good part is it brings out these discussions and debates which are sort of the heart and soul of the organization. The fact that we're willing to have this kind of serious dialogue. I see that I have grown as a person because of the organization tremendously, and I think I see a certain maturity of the organization as I look at individuals who've been involved in having that same kind of experience. I mean, I was not a leader in this organization because I was some expert on racism, because I wasn't. I mean, I have continued to learn over the years from this organization, and I think what I was able to contribute is dependability and to really follow through on most things that I said I would do. And I think that's what's important in the early years when we were trying to get things a little more structured for long-term survival.
During the time you've been a member, what have been some of your, just looking back, favorite moments, most memorable moments over the years?
The first convention was absolutely incredible. The experience of all of that energy and around bringing people together, like-minded people together, was just truly incredible. And the Columbus Convention in '83 was also, I think, a seminal convention in some ways, and I think at least part of that was it was the first year that we had separate black and white caucuses as a plenary session where everyone participated. It had been done as a workshop in '82 in Washington, D.C., but I think the fact that it really involved everyone was very important. Very profound for many people. I had an African-American partner at the time who said he participated in the Black Caucus and didn't say a word the whole time, and said it was one of the most profound experiences of his life. So I think that kind of thing happened to a lot of people because this society and culture in which we live really does not foster that kind of dialogue on these difficult issues of the racial barriers that would try to keep us separated. I thought '86 convention was very significant. I remember they had plenary sessions and breakout groups on alcoholism, and I think that was extremely important, and they had a alcohol-free banquet. That was very challenging to a lot of people, that whole discussion. And for me, I mean, those were really highlights or wonderful things. I really loved the '88 convention in Boston. I still think it had the best cultural events and activities, a lot of original work. And I guess sort of one of the highlights for me personally was the 1990 convention, because I really put a lot into the program for that convention and thought it was a really excellent convention. It came off fairly well. I sort of retired after that from active leadership, but that was a good way to go out. I mean, I was very pleased with what I contributed there.
Going back to the '86 convention, where was that held?
New York.
New York. Back on the San Francisco convention, the first convention for the organization, do you remember roughly how many people were there?
It was definitely over 100, and I think maybe under 200, but I'm not positive of that. I remember Mike Smith wrote something about it. I mean, the attendance was really, I think it was probably around 200 or close to it. He put in parentheses, but after all, the registration was only $10. But they did have a boat cruise and lots of social things. But the other thing that happened at that first convention is we did decide, there was no decision before that convention that we would form an organization. Mm-hmm. All that was done was bring the people together from the different chapters. And out of that convention, a decision was made to create an organization, and there was an interim steering committee of 6 people mm-hmm. charged with sort of holding the elections for the first series of officers. And there were 6 people, one from Toronto who was chairing it, and I don't remember his name, and Jerry Mallon from Philadelphia, and myself, and I'd have to look back in the and Mike Smith also has recorded this in the written history who the other people were, but I do remember there was a postal strike in Canada, so we really couldn't function with that person taking the lead on conducting the election. So Jerry Mallon really came through and for all intents and purposes took the leadership and made it happen when most of the rest of us weren't doing much. So I give a lot of credit to Jerry for getting us off the ground and holding that first election.
Were you living in San Francisco?
No, I was in Denver.
Oh, you were
Denver
in
based.
Okay. How did you feel during that first convention? What were some of the things that were on your mind that you were thinking about at the time?
I think I was on a high just from all the possibilities of being around that many other people, that it felt like home mm-hmm. in a place that I had only been for the first time. And we met at a Catholic church, which was very interesting. And
why a Catholic church?
Because they were open and receptive to
okay.
us.
I wasn't sure if there was a special reason.
No, at a reasonable. They maybe gave it for free. Maybe that's one reason the registration was so low. But I mean, if you look at the things that I'm not Catholic, but if you look at the things that have been happening in the Catholic Church, it's pretty significant mm-hmm. that they won't let dignity meet in the Catholic Church. This church in San Francisco would let us have a convention there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How
I didn't really answer your question, but
it's okay.
I don't think I have any more to say right
okay,
now.
No problem. We can always come back to that. How has being a member of this organization changed your life, affected your life, compared to if you had not been a member of this organization for the past 18 years?
I can't imagine my life if I hadn't been, really, but it has affected me totally because I now try to bring what I've learned here into the other organizations in which I'm involved, and it's colored my whole way of looking at the world, if you will, in a very positive way. And the people in this organization are truly family to me, and I'm also very involved in PFLAG, Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, and it's like I think part of my life work is trying to bring the good things about those two organizations together, and it still has a long ways to go. Educating some of these other organizations, it's not just educating them, transforming them to really reflect the society in which we live. And I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime or not. That it can get very discouraging, and yet I know that this organization has given me a commitment level much more significant than I ever had before. I was pretty, I would say, almost totally apolitical before I got involved in this organization. That's a pretty significant change. I mean, my whole life now is about social change.
What types of things that this organization has taught you that have you taken to PFLAG and some of the other groups?
The biggest challenge, the part that gets the most discouraging is the white members of organizations, of all the other organizations I'm involved with, who just don't get it, that they need to speak out on things that they don't perceive to be gay issues. In other words, the white majority sees no relevance, the white majority in the gay community, GLBTQ community, does not see immigration issues, English only, and those kinds of things as gay issues. And I'm saying, you know, I have all these Spanish-speaking friends, and who are gay, and how can you say that they're not gay issues? That part gets real discouraging because people just don't want to deal with it.
What do you feel is this organization's greatest accomplishment?
Only one.
Well, I'm sure there's more than one, but if you had to pick one, what would you say do you think is the greatest accomplishment, and then maybe what do you think are some other great accomplishments that this organization has done over the years?
Oh gosh. Well, the first one that came to mind is the Resisting Racism Manual. I think it's a really important resource, and again, I'm going to give credit to the editor, Jerry Mallon, and I don't think that's in a vacuum. I think adjunct with that are the workshops and other teaching mechanisms that came out of that manual, and the opportunities that then created for us to do some of the educational work out in the community. The other important things, I would say, have been often local, very local chapter around challenging bar discrimination and the inequitable carding policies and access issues for our non-white members. I think the germination and early years of creating what became the National Task Force on AIDS Prevention for gay and bisexual men of color is certainly a significant contribution. That organization has made a difference in many, many people's lives. I think we have, at various times, been pretty successful at bringing the issues of race and racism into dialogue at the national level. That's still probably one of our areas that has a lot of room for improvement, though, because it's a constant, I mean, that's a full-time job, but there have been times when we've been successful in that arena.
What do you like best about this organization?
The quality of the friendships I have made. I think I probably had, in retrospect, I would say I probably had some idea that the other white men in the organization were competitors sexually in the sexual arena, and while there may be elements of that present, I have found that I have as many really dear, close white friends in the organization as African American, and maybe that's sort of one of the surprise blessings of the involvement. And I don't think you get to know people unless you are involved and work and contribute as a volunteer. That's how you really get to know people, by working together.
Is there anything that you don't like about the organization?
Yes. I think the low point of the organization was our '87 convention and the whole really disastrous debate on name change.
Where was that?
In Milwaukee. And it has nothing to do with where it was held. It has to do with the fact that we had a year-long process out around the country in the chapters to discuss name change, and there was this whole process, and yet when it came to the actual discussion time, was like a volcano erupting, and it was very hurtful to many, many people. And I think the discussion could have happened without it being so many personal attacks, which is what it degenerated to. But that aside, because I also mentioned that in the positive thing, the fact that we're willing to take on these very difficult discussions, I'd say one of the negatives for me has been the people who come to the organization only for the sex. I think that's a real negative, and I want to have that be part of the holistic everything that's happening. And I think the people who come with only that agenda cause problems for the organization.
Do people with that agenda stay around long?
So at the local chapter level, not usually. The thing is, with the national convention, it can be an ongoing problem.
Going back to your first year with the organization, what was your first BWMT meeting like?
Well, there are a couple answers to that. When I knew I was going to start a chapter in Denver, I actually went to San Francisco for a week's vacation and went to 3 different activities during the 1 week.
Okay.
Got to experience, like a rap group, chat group kind of thing, and a social activity, and a regular, I don't remember whether it was a potluck and meeting or whatever, but 3 different kinds of activities in 1 week, and I couldn't even comprehend that there would be that 3 things of interest to me in 1 week, and that was back in 1980. Would have been November of 1980. And then the first meeting in Denver was in January of 81, and we had 27 or 8 people. I mean, I was elated. We didn't know if we'd have 5 people, and we had 27 or 8 people, so it was exhilarating. Both the experiences. I mean, I was just really excited about all that was possible from that week in San Francisco.
How have you seen race relations change over the years as a member? Just in the country as a whole.
They haven't gotten any better.
And also within the organization.
I think there's a lot more mutual respect within the organization, and that's part of the maturity thing that I mentioned earlier. That I see a lot more people really relating to one another as human beings, and a lot more, again, it's that element of real quality friendships, and you can see how happy people are to see each other if they haven't seen each other for a year or 2, and it totally, regardless of what race someone is, it's like they're really these incredible relationships without boundaries of race. But in the country as a whole, if anything, we've had some deterioration of the problems, and that just creates future opportunities for this organization to continue to grow.
Now, my next question is kind of a follow-up to that. How have you seen race relations in this country being a white man? From your vantage point?
I would have been oblivious to it if I had not been involved in this organization. So I think that's maybe a clue to part of how we might approach. It's not really a solution, but it's a clue there around where most white folks in this country are. They don't have a clue that they're just oblivious to their white privilege, and I think that's one of the things I'm most grateful to this organization about, the fact that I have